Henry I. Before Henry I was on the throne, his brother William II was on the throne. Both, and also their other brother Robert, were children of William the Conqueror. Then one day William II was hunting in New Forest, and then an arrow shot by his friend William Tyrrell hit him, and he died. And the speed with which now his brother Henry I came onto the throne gave rise to some people having the suspicion that that was maybe a planned assassination. But now, in the year 1100, there is now Henry I ruling in England. And as already his father William the Conqueror and his brother William II, now Henry I has a rivalry with Robert, the Duke of Normandy. The Duke of Normandy had already attacked with William the Conqueror, he had attacked with William II, and now he attacks also invading England. He invades also against Henry I. But they're making the Treaty of Elton in the year 1101, and Robert, his brother, stays as the Duke of Normandy, and he is the King of England. Henry II is King of England in the year 1106. Robert and he are again fighting and having battles, and then Henry I wins again Robert and imprisons him for life in Cardiff Castle. So, that is the story, and now he becomes the Duke of Normandy as well, King of England and Duke of Normandy. And he is ruling, he is governing, he is administrating all there, and there's written in this book that some Ajoun region or something was lost while it was ruled in the Normandy under Robert, and now Henry I tries to regain them, but the growing power of Louis IX, the French king, stops him from doing that, and Henry II comes into more and more debt, majorly by the Pope, and he fears no excommunication, so he stops with these war adventures or war doings, and he starts now to administer and govern. He's then also called in the book that he was then called the cleric. Now, and he makes reforms. For example, is when the reform done the pipe rolls, which were then for 700 years until 1834 in use. They were about concerning the crown finances, and he also has then the Chancellor of Exchequer, Roger Salisbury. Already directly after he came onto the throne, he imprisoned the Bishop of Durham, the Rufold Flamber, in the Tower of London, who escapes then from the Tower of London. Now he is now governing and ruling, and he marries now Edith, the daughter of Malcolm III, who seems to be the Scottish king, and who is also the niece of Edgar the Earthling, who seems to have been a Saxon king in England previously, and that gives him stronger ties with Scotland and also with England, because he was the son of William the Conqueror, who had come over from France, from northern France, from Normandy to England. And now he's ruling and governing, and he has now with her, Edith, 2 sons and 2 daughters, but at the end of the day, I don't know how it's calculated, where is it that he has only 1 legitimate son. He has also more children who are not legitimate. Now, just 1 legitimate son, who one day comes with a ship from France over to Britain. He has written the pilot was drunk, stirred the vessel against the rock, and the ship is sinking, and Henry II is heartbroken over that his son had drowned. And now he tries to convince the barons to accept then his daughter Matilda on the throne. Then in the year 1135, Henry I dies of food poisoning near Rouen in France. So that's the story of Henry I, the main one here written in the book. Now, how goes it then a little bit on? There is now Matilda, his daughter, and Stephen. Both are grandchildren of William the Conqueror. And the barons are supporting Stephen on the throne, but some are then switching and starting to support Matilda, the granddaughter of William the Conqueror and also the daughter of the previous King Henry I. And they are now making civil war for 19 years. After 18 years of civil war, so 19 years in total civil war and 18 years of civil war, then Henry Plantagenet, the son of Matilda, comes to England, and he reaches then an agreement with Stephen that on the death of Stephen he will become the King of England, which happens 1 year later, in the year 1154. And in the year 1154, the grandson of Henry I, Henry Plantagenet, becomes the King of England as Henry II. And that is according to the history of the kings and queens of England and Scotland, mainly written on the page 38. The positions and views expressed are the ones of the source and don't necessarily align with my own or with the ones of the entity spoken of. Hi and welcome. I'm trying to learn medieval studies, today Henry I, and after we've done it, we're going to do stretching. And if you participate in stretching, then it's better to ask. Henry I, he was reigning in England from 1100 until 1135. His parents were William I and Matilda of Flanders, and King of England and Duke of Normandy, both. So King of England and Duke of Normandy. And he has 2 sons and 2 daughters and more illegitimate children. Okay, we already read that he is the brother. William II was an active man, fond of sport, and was killed by an arrow fired by his friend Walter Tyrrell while hunting in the New Forest. Walter incautiously aimed an arrow at a stag, which missed the stag and pierced the king in the breast. It has been suggested that this was not an accident and that Tyrrell was acting under orders of Henry I, William's brother, present at the scene and who succeeded William to the throne. Henry I. The speed with which Henry was crowned a few days after his brother William Rufus's death, so his brother is William Rufus's death, and the thought he took possession of the royal treasure gives a credence to the suggestion that he planned William's death. Okay, just the speed of the mention here, but they maybe don't just mean the time difference, but also how he was able to adapt so fast and to fit in and get the position of being the king, that he had all prepared basically, is the idea, because he could not have an idea that his brother would be, he was probably at good health, otherwise he wouldn't be hunting. But so basically the question is, how could he be so fast prepared to take over the throne and have all already organized? I think that is what they mention with the sentence. I don't know anything more than the sentence says, or the other sentence. Once in power, Henry proved to be an able and conscientious king concerned with administration and reform of existing laws. Okay, well, he was an able king and conscientious, so I think that means that he was something like morals, with conscience. I don't know. But he was governing as he should. His right to be king was, as it was expected, his right to be king was challenged by Robert, the Duke of Normandy, whom he defeated at the Battle of CTADRWYU and imprisoned at Cardiff Castle. If I understand it correctly, Robert, Rufus, and Henry I are all 3 brothers. Rufus was the King of England. Both are the children of William the Conqueror. Rufus got the English crown, and Robert the Duke of Normandy. Both are already rivaling. Rufus dies now, and Henry I is the brother of Rufus, so the brother of Robert in the Normandy as well. And Robert was the firstborn son of William the Conqueror, and he challenges now Henry I on the throne. But then there was a battle of CTADRWYU, at which Henry I defeats Robert the Duke of Normandy and imprisons him at Cardiff Castle. That Cardiff was, I think, in Wales, so it was Cardiff Castle, if I'm right, but it's a castle directly at the sea. Cardiff is a sea town. It's a pretty big castle, a pretty powerful castle. He even assumed, it is not so big, but it's at a good position. It's good position. He even assumed the title of Duke of Normandy in addition to that of King of England. So after defeating his brother Robert, the Duke of Normandy, and imprisoning him at Cardiff Castle, he also started then to use the title Duke of Normandy. Henry's ambition to restore the Angevin possessions lost under Robert were not a success, despite several attempts which were foiled by the growing power of Louis IX, King of France. I don't know what it means, but I have an idea. We entered in possession of some type of territory in the Normandy, which governed somewhere on the Normandy, and they came under possession of the French king. He tried to regain them, but it wasn't successful. I don't know. Such commitments increased his debts, however, and as a major part of these were with the papacy, he feared excommunication for non-payment. Okay, he feared to be excluded from the church because he wasn't able to pay the money which he was partly owning to the church, which he had lent to make, for example, things like what I believe here, attacking Louis IX, his troops to get the Angevin possessions. Henry now devoted himself to the good government of England and became known as Beauclerk for his talent for administration and his knowledge of both Latin and English. With Roger Salisbury as his chancellor in the court of the Exchequer, he set about the reforms and the control of crown finances. The system known as pipe roads continued in use until June 1834. So these are not many informations as explained, but what we mean is that he then started not to make adventures outwards and try to attack France, but devoted his ruling on England and tried to administer England. He could speak Latin and English, or had a good knowledge in England in Latin and English, and he appointed a person to be the Chancellor of Exchequer with a crown finance system and a reform of it, which was then known as the pipe rolls and in use until 1834. Henry married Edith, daughter of Malcolm III. He was the Scottish king, who was also the niece of Edgar the Earthling, and thereby strengthened his ties with Scotland and the existing English establishment. Okay, he married the daughter of a Scottish king or something. It wasn't mentioned here. It was just a few times mentioned. Edith, the daughter of a Scottish king or something, Malcolm III, and that strengthened the ties with Scotland. Henry's only legitimate son and heir to the throne was drowned while crossing the Channel from France. Was drowned, I think I mean an accident. Not was drowned, he drowned, I think, do I mean. He died in the British Channel. Returning from Normandy aboard the White Ship, William lost his life and the pilot who was drunk steered the vessel on the rock. I think they mean his son, not him though. So from the Normandy, his son and his heir was coming over on a ship, but the captain was drunk, or the pilot was drunk, steered against the rock, and the ship filled with water and sunk. Now, they had previously already here in the book said, and I wanted to say that I took that into Viking studies, but they said here that, and we're going to talk a bit about a war and a massacre, that after that we Andre ordered a massacre of all Danes on St. Brice's Day, the 13th November. And I was looking up a few names, and I said it also in my video of all, but it seems more that it were regional attacks against more or less fighting people and also unfighting people. So the first thing, it was probably not a massacre of all Danes, and certainly not of all the people who were then descendants of the ancestors, so Viking, Danish and British ancestors. Not against them, and also not against all. But the things which were, the way it goes on makes more sense, that people stayed in his administrative circles and so on, but it was not against all. The total extermination was not. But it was not like that. And it was, the things which were found are not much, which actually indicates that not that much was, but the things which were found indicate that it was a targeted attacking of singular groups of people, not a total annihilation. And also the people which were ordered to be attacked were in great part, were for a part people who were English but who were fighting on side of the Vikings. So it was more a targeted attack against fighters, not a massacre of all Vikings living with their families. Now, because they said that at that point here, like that sounding as if all should be massacred, and also the other thing, why he's called the Andre, the Ethelred the Andre, which was a little bit previously known to Henry I, it is because he was ill-advised, but not the ill-advised to drive the Vikings, which by the way are also, I had to look up a few names, and which the French did, they bribed them also, and that was quite successful. And after that, the Vikings started to attack England because the French, I don't know what the word for it is, they built up the cities to be defensive against the Vikings. And then the Vikings started to no longer attack so much France but England, then in the 7th and 8th century. So they also bribed him. He was not called unwary because he was ill-advised to bribe the Vikings, but because he was ill-advised that the Vikings were planning to kill him and the people around him and become the leading group of England. And that led him then to order the massacre of the Danes. That seemed to be the ill advice. That people were telling him that the Vikings were after his life, which was maybe not true, or at least nothing real. And then he ordered a massacre, but not of all Danes, but more targeted attacks at singular places and regions against fighting people, or people in fighting age and gender. And also against all people who were fighting on side of the Vikings. And another thing, also then we had then as next thing, Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor had no children. That is why there was the succession rate not so clear, who becomes his successor. And that is why when the thing with William the Conqueror, the father of Henry I, was when that he comes from the Normandy over to England, it was because Edward the Confessor had no children. And so he made then not William the Conqueror of Duke of Normandy his heir, but his brother, Harold of Wessex. And another thing, Harold of Wessex was fighting not just a little battle at the Battle of Stamford Bridge at York, it is directly next to York. It was a bigger battle, and so he hurried upwards. So he was not in the north when the Battle of Hastings was coming, he was in the south and hurried in 4 days, 300 kilometers up to York, was fighting the battle. And that battle, the next thing then, which I want to say is, which I explain what that is because in that battle, I think his brother again, or someone, maybe his nephew or something, was also fighting on side of Vikings. He had excelled his nephew or something, or brother, and he was attacking together with the Vikings, with Harold Hardrada in England. The 300 boats were come. So there was again a British person who was excelled fighting together with the Vikings. And now when at the Battle of Stamford Bridge we won, it is a bit called because they had all gone over a little small bridge, is written. And they couldn't go over it when they first stopped, but when they could go over it, that is why it's called, and they defeated, but he lost, it's not completely clear all the numbers, but he lost 5,000-6,000 people. And when he went down, 3 days after the battle or something, William the Conqueror set over. And he hurried again completely down to England. So he hurried completely up 300 kilometers and then directly down, all the foot or horses down. And then the Battle of Hastings, where he lost and died. And it was also talking about how could William the Conqueror, alone with 2,000 people, conquer whole England. He had probably more like 10,000. He had also support. It was not just William the Conqueror. He had more support. And when that was in one place, he gave the people who were on his side then places to govern, and the other people not. So there were then people coming on his side. And Harold of Wessex, the person of England going against him, was just hurried up, lost half of his army at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, hurried again down, and there he lost then against William the Conqueror. And so just some background information to it. And now you're written with Henry I, what was it even? I don't know what it was. With the channel crossing now, if the pilot was drunk now, this is why I explained of it, because they were previously not so detailed about things. Whether there was no all Danes or targeted attacking of groups fighting against them or something like that, or who were fighting on the other side, so military things, but they were not so detailed. I just want to say that we maybe should not take it so completely as 100% fact that they're saying the pilot was drunk. Maybe that is also a myth. And now I don't know. That was the medieval studies part of Henry I. We're going to read in the next part of Henry I, and we're going to continue also at some place in Viking studies with both parts. But what I just explained is important for medieval studies and for Viking studies and so on. So, if you were here for medieval studies, you can go directly to the next part of medieval studies. We will continue with medieval studies if you stay here and participate in the shortened 1-minute stretching as we did your task. The feet are standing together, and often with one foot and the other foot. Then with the heels and the other heels. And as far as you can go. and then back in again. Toes, toes, heels, heels. This time stay down in the knees. And up again. Legs to the sides and position the arms up. We short go to the side. In middle. Out the other side. In middle. Out and reach. In middle. Out and reach. In middle. Out and lean onto the knees. To defend. Out and shoulder front. In back. Out the other corner front. In the arms up. Out and down. In and cross the legs. And in and out. That was a short stretching. Thank you very much. And at the next time.